Hello, this is Tyler Scheck-Snyder. Wanted to create a video today talking about a topic that's very close to my heart, and I think we've all seen play out in our virtual social media talking centers over the last couple of years, and that is the splintering relationship between modern American and European Christians and modern European American Jews, as well as their Israeli, counterparts, their Jewish homeland there in the Middle East. I bring this up because following the October 7th attacks, we've seen a wide array of opinions shared about, Israel, their methodology for taking out Hamas within the Gaza Strip. And then those of us here in America and in Europe have had, no shortage of opinions on this conflict. And our relationship, I would say, that I see specifically on social media between American Christians and some European Christians versus, Zionists supporting Jewish people is that of a splintering relationship that was very strong for decades. And I don't think this is without good reason, but I think it is a obvious problem on the horizon for two groups that have consistently defined themselves as having shared Judeo-Christian values. And it's not that I don't think there's good reason for the splintering. It's that in the long run, Jews and Christians would both benefit by continuing our positive relationships with each other. The fact that we do business together, we seem to avoid the differences within our religious texts and focus on the similarities to create cohesive cultures together. There's a long history of Christians and Jews working together to create high-functioning societies, and I think moving forward in the world, if we don't continue to participate in that structure, we will be leaving behind a lot of our cultural value systems we've utilized for a long time, right? A better way to look at this, I think, is what have Christians and Jews done to each other that has restructured the relationship so that there's a lot of animosity towards the other group. And this has happened at other points periodically at history. I think obviously within everybody's mind space, they think of the Holocaust in the the early 1930s stretching until the mid 1940s. But if you go far enough back, there's many different times throughout history with European Christians or Middle Eastern Christians and Jews having constant infighting. I mean, right, you go far enough back and there's obvious issues between Jesus and certain Jewish peoples in those communities who participated in his execution. I know it was the Romans, but to say that Jews weren't involved is not being very historically accurate. I'm not one of those people that blames Jews for the death of Jesus. But the point I'm trying to make here is that the relationship between Jews and Christians goes back as ancient as the religions themselves, and it is one of peaceful coexistence, but also it can dip its toes into the violent side of humanity, as does any of these closely tied relationships between different communities. As we look ahead to the 21st century we now find ourselves in, I think as a Christian, the biggest thing that I feel continually slighted by when I see how the Jewish community carries themselves in the modern world is that in the rise of identity politics, we've seen the Jewish community both partake in being the oppressed class because of the existence of the Holocaust and the religious persecution they've felt in the last couple hundred years in many different ways. And I don't want to devalue that, but the realistic nature of any of these identity politics is that they are grounded in the class systems that we observe around us. And what do I mean by that? Is that when people are participating in identity politics, it is usually a means through which they get the working masses engaged with each other and having shared interest. And that's how we've seen it play out in the last 100 years in America, right? The rise of unions, the rise of workers' rights, the rise of workers' power. A lot of this has been the unionization and the unity created between the working class and how they've utilized that for their own benefit. And the harsh truth about Jews in America, however you want to spin it, is that they are not predominantly part of the working class. They are predominantly part of the elite class. by the nature of the caste system, I guess you might want to call it, that they find themselves a part of, they are within the identity politics view of the world an oppressing class within modern day America. The reason I care about this is not that I'm one of these modern leftoids that likes to participate in the identity-based political sphere. It's that Jews have taken advantage of this system to both play the oppressor and the oppressed within our modern cultural dialogue. And there may even be some merit to their points about being the oppressed class, but it doesn't really matter when, on a per capita basis, the amount of economic control that your average Jew in America has is far more than the average, way more than the average black American, but far more even still than white Americans and Asian Americans, who are kind of the two groups that are pointed to as being successful in our country as a racial demographic, right? When we look at white Americans, Asian Americans, those are the two racial demographics that perform very well at kind of every economic metric that we might consider successful. Jews outperform both white Americans and Asian Americans to a large degree. They have higher IQs on average. These are well documented facts. It's not, I have no animosity in my heart towards Jewish people for their excellence. And I think it's a wonderful thing to have excellent people as a part of our society. I am offended that the Jewish cultural dialogue is centered around still portraying themselves as an oppressed class. And it's important that we, as we move forward in the world and away from identity politics, to start to understand, regardless of the caste system you may feel like your group is a part of, we all hold some degree of power to change the inefficiencies we see in the society around us. That sentence doesn't make much sense. That sentence doesn't make much sense at first listen. But what I'm trying to get at here is that the Jewish people hold a high degree of the economic power within our society, and there are obvious economic issues within the American system as it stands right now. It feels like they are not utilizing their standing for the benefit of all Americans. And I don't want to just label Jewish people as having this issue, right? I think it's really important to say that a lot of groups within America that are part of any type of ethno-religious kind of separatist organization, they typically participate in very prevalent in-group preference. And by in-group preference, I'm talking about how Jews, Indians, and different groups like this who move to America will then showcase high degrees of supremacist feelings towards their own group, right? And I actually think the Indians and Asian Americans are a far worse example of this behavior at its worst. When I look at Jewish CEOs and Jewish people in positions of economic control, they participate very heavily in hiring other people of different races. There is still some issues within their willingness to apply dynastic principles to their organizations and companies. You see a lot of C-suite positions filled out with Jewish members when it's a Jewish company, but in general, they're still willing to hire people of other races. I think it's a far grosser problem when we look at how Indians who are moving in this country are treating white Americans and black Americans, and how certain Asian American groups who move to this country and take over companies, how they treat white Americans and black Americans. I think it's vitally important that every immigrant group that comes here to take advantage of the amazing economy we benefit from as Americans, they must also participate in being beneficial to both black Americans, white Americans, all Americans who came there before them, with a prevalence on the black and white Americans, because those are the two groups that actually built the country as it stands today. And certain conservatives will get very angry when you mention the black Americans part. And I've always found that so hilarious because black Americans and white Americans are the closest cultural allies in the growing culture war. And if you still haven't recognized that, you're doing your cultural system a great disservice. You're not participating in unity. You're participating in more separatism. And I suppose, my video here can seem like that when I'm complaining about Indians and Southeast Asians and Jewish control within my society. And that's not, I don't want these people to leave America. I want them to continue to participate in our cultural system. And I want them to benefit all of us with their inventions and their brilliance and their ability to create companies and improve companies and improve our world around us. I think these are wonderful things. And I think there are many immigrants who come here to improve America. The issue is that some of them aren't, and we aren't allowed to criticize the ones that are doing an active disservice to America. And that's my biggest problem. And it's not that I want to be a Nick Fuentes type figure who just complains about every non-white person. It's that people have come to this country under the presumption of being pro-America, and they come here and they are enacting cultural value systems that are antithetical to what the American cultural value system is. And I think it's really important that Jews and Christians find their way towards being a unified class again, instead of the splintering we're seeing right now, because similar to the relationship between white American Christians and black American Christians, I think for European Christians and American Christians, the European and American Jews are our closest religious allies, especially when you compare and contrast with Islamic peoples, Buddhist peoples, Confucianist peoples. Those Eastern or Islamic belief structures are so heavily different than the westernized system we've created that you can define as Judeo-Christian. I just feel like earnestly as a Christian, I am not defended by my Jewish brothers in arms in America. I feel like many Jewish peoples in America have no interest in helping white Christian Americans. Maybe this isn't true. I've had my best friend is a Jewish person. There's lots of Jewish people I love in my day-to-day life. But when I look at prevalent Jewish thought leaders who exist within our world, they seem to just want to take and take and take and take and take from America. Ben Shapiro, figures like that, Netanyahu himself, the Israeli leaders that come here. And it hurts. It hurts because I think white American Christians and black American Christians and European Christians and all these groups that feel slightly shoved off to the side by the Jewish cultural movement right now, they want to have a positive relationship with our Jewish brothers in this country. But Jewish people, as the class that currently holds the financial and political control, are using it to place benefits on their Jewish brothers to an unfair degree that are not received by the black Americans, white Americans, Hispanic Americans, original Americans. And I understand the reasoning to have in-group preference. And I understand why the Jewish people stick together so strongly. But we must all start to ask ourselves the question as Americans, are our allegiances to our cultural value system from 200 years ago that we were born into halfway across the world, or is our allegiance to the American cultural value system that we have all moved to participate in and further? I think that is where I will end the video today. I will look forward to posing more questions to you guys in the future. I never want to come across as someone who has it all figured out, but I do want to hop on the internet and start to put out my ideas about these certain topics in a way that I feel like other people can relate to. I look forward to hearing anybody's retorts about these topics. I have nothing but love for all these different groups I spoke about, but I am trying to speak about these different ethno-religious groups in a way that feels honest in a world that is filled with dishonesty. I hope all of us humans can enjoy the best life possible, and that will always be my mission. I love you all, and thank you for listening.